welcome to another episode of our mini podcast, I Built a Company That Makes a Difference by B1. Here we talk to founders of sustainable businesses to get their takes on how and why they started their companies and the lessons that they've learned along the way. Today, I'm joined by Alex Standley, creator of Luxe Leopard Lifestyle, which is a personal styling service that focuses on helping women feel confident in adopting conscious shopping habits. So this conversation I'm really interested in getting into, especially around conscious shopping habits, which are habits that I'm sure all of us can adopt. So interested and excited to jump into Alex's world. So Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is one of my favorite subjects, so I'm really happy to be here to talk about more mindful shopping habits.
Awesome. I think we all need that. So let's start back at, I want to say the beginning, but maybe the beginning of Luxe Leopard Lifestyle starts before the start of actually when the business started. So can you talk to us about just yourself and how this business came to be?
Yeah, sure. So it actually kind of had two phases of starting the business. So my whole background is in the fashion industry. So I worked as a fashion buyer for about 15 years for the likes of Amazon and Marks and Spencer. Had an incredible career, but I started to really feel out of alignment in terms of my values, and I started to sort of question, probably back in 2018, whether it was still a good fit for me personally and my purpose. And I was encouraged by one of my colleagues actually at Amazon to bring back my sort of more creative side, to start an Instagram account. So I just started sharing my kind of daily outfits and things like that. It was, never necessarily with the intention of starting a business. But I happened to come across somebody who was a personal stylist who trained other stylists, and very heavily pregnant at the time. I went to one of her events and absolutely fell in love with the concept of it. And then on having my daughter in 2019, I started to reevaluate, what was important to me, and the kind of the world that I wanted to leave behind for my daughter, and realized that this was kind of my opportunity to start something with a more positive impact and a kind of a bigger purpose to help other people. And personal styling really fit that mission for me, because it utilized all of my expertise. So I started my business at that point in 2019, trained as a personal stylist just in the areas that I sort of had gaps in from my industry experience, and was really, really passionate about helping women to feel the very best about themselves and to reconnect with themselves, but also in doing so, create that positive impact on people and planet as well.
Can you talk for folks who don't come from the fashion industry, which is, I'm speaking about myself now, can you talk about what does a fashion buyer do? What is this job?
Yes, sure. So I think everyone thinks it's a super glamorous
That's
job.
what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, I mean, it is in a lot of ways. It was an absolutely incredible career. I got to travel the world and essentially start from scratch with developing collections for the high street. So when I worked at Marks and Spencer, I worked very closely with my design team, and we would do a lot of catwalk research, street style research, to form the trends that we were going after for that season. And then I would work very closely with them in developing sketches for the product, which would then be sent off to our supply chain, which was mainly Far East at that point, with some suppliers in Turkey and kind of closer to home. And then you would work through the product development process from that initial design and kind of spec pack all the way through to getting the physical product signed off with the leadership team, and thinking about what the presentation was going to be like in store or online, the customer journey, all of that kind of thing, to actually finally seeing that product come into store kind of 6 to 12 months later, and then seeing people out on the street kind of wearing what you'd created. And obviously lots more that goes into it around negotiations and pricing architecture and everything that goes into product development.
So I've got two questions now that what you just said sparked. One is industry in general. Because you've worked in this industry with some big names for a while,
Mm.
what has the popularity of fast fashion done to, for example, your old job? You said, seeing through product development, customer life cycle, and in this case, product is clothes and accessories, and seeing it, in the store 6 months later. For me, I was thinking, oh my God, 6 months? Like, what has fast fashion done to this whole
Mm.
life cycle? That's my first question. My second question is, what towards the end when you were thinking, is it time for me to go or stay, or what were the things that you were feeling really strongly about that you weren't able to do? I mean, maybe a clash of values, but maybe not. Maybe just something wasn't fitting. What was it that you were able to quite do that pushed you to start your own business?
Yeah, sure. So first question, I think it very much depends on the product area because although, the likes of Zara and the ultra fast fashion retailers like Shein and people like that can produce things in a matter of weeks from concept to delivery into store. There are still quite a lot of products that just inherently take longer to produce, like outerwear, footwear. I worked on handbags for 5 years, and that has quite a long lead time in comparison to, say, a t-shirt that you might produce out of Turkey or something like that. So I think there's certain product categories that have probably been impacted more so than others in terms of those lead times and speed to market and all of that kind of thing. But I think people would probably be surprised that there are still a lot of product areas where it does still take that kind of at least 4 to 6 months from that concept into when it's delivered into store. And I think that's one of the things that I talk quite a lot about with my audience and with my clients is that, by the time something has arrived in store, it's already kind of in inverted commas old, because of that whole process and that whole conception. And certainly the inspiration that it came from originally in terms of that kind of catwalk inspiration probably happened, even further back than that. So I think that's a really important part of shifting your mindset as well, and shifting your mindset to thinking about what it is that you enjoy and what your own personal sense of style is. But I'm sure we'll come on to that later. But to answer your second question, for me, it was about realizing the impact that, the kind of daily actions that I was a part of, I guess, as a buyer were having on people and planet. So, the waste, for example, that I was seeing in terms of, the huge amount of markdown that was happening at the end of each season. And then as buyers, we didn't necessarily see, what happened to that at the end of the process. But you knew that, there was this huge amount of stock that you hadn't sold through, and it would go into markdown, but then there's something that happens to it after that point. And, having to sort of squeeze your margins and keep negotiating harder on either terms when I was at Amazon or cost prices when I was at Marks and Spencer. Somebody loses out in that process and in that squeezing of margins. So I think it was just an awakening, I guess, to the knock-on effect and the knock-on impact to people and planet of all of those kind of daily decisions that were being made.
Okay. And from the offset, did you say, all right, okay, I need to do something else. Starting my own business is the thing that I'm going to do? Or was it a gradual, as we know now, and a lot of the audience knows, entrepreneurship is not for the faint-hearted, for sure.
No.
And sometimes it takes a leap or a real hard push. Was that a gradual process that you got to, okay, this is what my business is going to look like, and indeed I'm going to start my own business? Or did you explore some other avenues?
Yeah, it was definitely gradual. I think, to be honest, I had always had that long-term ambition to have my own business in some form or another. I think going right back to when I was at school and I was studying business studies, and my dad had a time when he had his own business as well. And I think I always had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit within me. And it was just figuring out, through that kind of creative process of starting my Instagram account and opening myself up to other ideas and other perspectives, that planted the seed. And then I started to, I guess, have time on maternity leave to think about what that might look like.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. That is, so you said you started your company in 2019 or 2018?
2019.
2019. Okay. So then you had less than a year probably before COVID came about. Can you talk about, since it's 2019, let's say the first 2 years, what did that look like? And please, for all of the entrepreneurs out there, include any strong emotions that you felt, like terrified or
Yeah.
elated or, whatever. What did those first 2 years look like? How did you get your first clients? How did you get off the ground? And what were some of your like milestones that you were like, this is amazing. This is inspiration to keep going. I know I'm headed in the right direction.
So I think, to caveat, I was very fortunate. Well, I say very fortunate. I think, there's different ways of looking at things, but I worked part-time alongside my business for the first few years. So I had that kind of safety net, if you like, or comfort blanket of that regular paycheck coming in. Which I think was fortunate in a lot of ways because of the pandemic and because of the challenges, shall we say, that brought about. Because I was only, I think, 4 or 5 months into my business when that started. And it obviously had practical implications on my business in terms of I couldn't do face-to-face.
Were you previously, you were doing like in-person styling and consultations?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that put a stop to that immediately.
Yeah, events, wardrobe edits, color analysis, personal shopping, all of those things. But they were kind of allowed intermittently, depending on what tier you were in and all of that kind of thing that was going on. But I had to really pivot my business to make sure that I could offer some services online, because otherwise I just wasn't going to be able to survive.
And here, just when I say here, it's because you and I are both in the kind of London area in the UK. In the UK, COVID lockdown, especially that first lockdown, that was very, very serious compared to what my family in the US was living. So it was quite serious. I remember at a certain time I was in South London at the time, and I have a COVID baby, so I was pregnant. And I remember with my husband, we could go out twice a day for 1 hour walk at a time. And they were issuing fines and police were checking, et cetera. So this was just to put a caveat on, like, it wasn't like, oh goodness, I just decided to pivot my business online. It was a little bit of a different experience than most of, for example, the US, where pivoting online was not just necessary, it was a mandate if you wanted to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. It was do or die kind of thing. Yeah, and I think, in hindsight, when I look back at that, I see it as a huge opportunity, because I think if that hadn't have happened, I wouldn't have had such a big catalyst to create that momentum and that change in my business. And with the way that the world's developing, online is such an important aspect of, especially, growing and scaling your business, because there's obviously only so much that impact you can have just in a local kind of vicinity. So it really allowed me to reach people in, any location, because I was able to do color analysis online, do wardrobe edits on Zoom, and find new tools to make personal shopping online simpler and easier. So all of these things I now see as a blessing, but at that point in time it was very much like, why the hell did I do this? What am I going to do? It felt quite catastrophic at the time.
That is good to know. That is really good to know. And you just mentioned a bunch of things that I didn't, I'm very excited to get into, like, the extent of what personal styling is, because you just mentioned a bunch of things here that I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh, I guess it would include this as well. So what does First of all, can we talk about Lux Leopard Lifestyle in terms of what services do you provide? How does somebody work with you? And then what might that look like? Just kind of what does that feel like? Do you log in? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, sure. So I primarily work with kind of busy professional women who are quite time poor.
Mhm.
So actually, although we can do a lot in person now, there's still a huge proportion of my work that's done online because of convenience,
Mhm.
essentially. So I offer all of the kind of traditional personal styling services like wardrobe edits, color analysis, and personal shopping. But for me, it's very much about that reconnection with yourself. So a really important kind of foundational part of my styling with my clients is defining what your style personality is. And creating it, because a lot of people haven't really given it a second thought, especially if you are, you know, for example, a busy working mum. You don't have time to just sit around daydreaming about, you know, these are my style aspirations, this is exactly how I want to show up, and this is the image that I want to portray to the world. So all of that is a really important starting point, which I try and work with all of my clients on, especially if they've never had the experience of working with a personal stylist before. Because without those foundations, it's more challenging to create, you know, a truly sustainable sense of style and a capsule wardrobe, and, you know, something that's fit for purpose for your lifestyle, and all of the considerations that you need to create those kind of more conscious shopping habits.
Do you find yourself being part therapist? Is the actual question that I want to ask. In that, especially in that first initial meeting when you're trying to dig into, like, I was just thinking of myself if I was one of your clients, because I fit right in that category. Yeah, if you were like, what is your style personality? I would have to be like, I don't know. I don't know.
Mm.
Yoga pants, probably. And like, I don't know, in reality or my aspiration. So do you find
Mm.
yourself being part therapist?
Yes, absolutely. I think you know, it's something that I really enjoy about my role, because it's so much more than just the clothes. It's, you know, there's so much of our self-esteem and our kind of history and our emotional baggage that's all kind of wrapped up in our wardrobes. And so it's a real transformation and a real journey that you go on with clients. You know, when I work with them on my signature program, which is like 5 different sessions, you really get to know someone on quite a personal level. And it's amazing to see the shift from, you know, when you first start working with someone and they've got absolutely no idea like who they are, how they want to show up, to the kind of the end of the process when, you know, they're fully owning their brilliance, and, you know, fully recognizing who it is that they want to show up as, and they've got a wardrobe to match that as well.
Do you give your new clients any homework to do before they get to you?
Yes. So I've got some quite in-depth questionnaires that I share with my clients, where it really, I think they probably hate me a little bit when they first read those questionnaires, because they're like, oh, I don't know the answer to these questions. But it's intentionally like that because it makes them really think about who they are, and you know, what they like, and all of those kind of things. And then I also get them to do a bit of their own research in terms of from an image perspective. So picking 3 images that speak to kind of their aspirations of where they want to end up at the end of the process. So, you know, for example, 1 casual image, 1 work image, 1 occasion image, or something along those lines. Because it's important for me to be able to visualize where they want to get to as well.
Sure, sure. And then you mentioned a couple times color analysis. How
Yeah.
do you do this? What is this? And how do you do this?
So in I work in a kind of traditional sense, where I use the seasonal color analysis system, which essentially, without going into too much detail, it's based on the 4 seasons as we would understand in terms of the weather. So It's spring, summer, autumn, winter. And if you are sitting within spring or autumn, you have a warm undertone to your skin. Or if you sit in summer and winter, you have a cooler undertone to your skin. But the difference with how I approach it is I don't believe in kind of sitting people into a box, because I don't believe that anybody, I believe that everybody is totally unique. So I like to create something completely bespoke for all of my clients. So we use the drape system, which is essentially I have a set of color drapes, and I work through those kind of over the shoulders of my clients, so that the drapes are sitting next to their skin, their hair, their eyes, their lip color, all of those things that we take into consideration. And we work through and kind of decipher which colors are the very best fit for them. But also it's really important to take into consideration, you know, personal preference. And for some reason you might not like, I don't know, the color burgundy because it was your school uniform, or, you know, there's so much kind of, like I said, personal emotion and baggage that comes into things as well. So for me, it's very much a bespoke process to create somebody's personalized color palette that really works uniquely for them.
That must be, doing a color analysis must be really eye-opening, because that's quite scientific. It's not just like, oh, I feel like I like this thing and that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
People must be kind of blown away when they think, oh, this is the range, or this is the set or kind of colors that I should be wearing versus this, which is not for me. And do people generally know this already, or is it like this is a process that everyone discovers something new?
I think everybody discovers something new. I think there's definitely different types of clients. Like some people just, and I think it depends on what you do as well, you know, as for a living, how creative you are, and, you know,
Oh, that makes sense.
that kind of thing. So if you have to work with color in some way within your job role, then you might have some appreciation for what might work. But also if you're quite intuitive, like you might have a good idea of what colors work for you already, and it's kind of like confirmation. Whereas some people have absolutely no idea. You know, at the beginning of the process, they're kind of sat there, and I'll ask them, you know, of these two, which do you think looks best, or what feels good to you? And they're a bit like a rabbit caught in the headlights, like, oh my God, I have no idea. And then when I start to explain to them, this works because of this, and this suits this, and by the end of the process, they're able to more confidently say to me, yes, I prefer this one over this one. And, you know, it's amazing how quick that process is, that, you know, your eye kind of gets trained to what you're looking for, even as the client. And it's amazing to see that transformation as well.
Can you talk about how you fold sustainability into your business and what role it plays? That's part A of my question. Part B is, do people seek you out or find you because they are relatively conscious or sustainable shoppers themselves, and they think, okay, she's doing something that aligns to my value set, or is it something that you're educating people as you go?
Yeah, so I think so in terms of what I do to bring it into my process, I think, as I was mentioning before, around the reconnection with yourself, that is paramount in how I bring it into the process, because it would be very easy for me to just take clients on, you know, to go personal shopping and have no consideration for all of those prior steps, like style, personality, color analysis, body shape, what they've already got in their wardrobes, you know, having all of that initial kind of style foundations and groundwork, which I know, you know, that there are a lot of stylists that do work in that way, and you know, not being detrimental to what they do, but for me, it's got to be part of a bigger picture, in order to create a more sustainable way of working. And then I guess the second part to it is I primarily focus on pre-loved and secondhand fashion, or if I'm looking at newness for clients, then I will always try and focus on sustainable fashion brands that I know I can trust, you know, because they're meeting certain criteria, and they have fabrics that meet certain certifications, and they pay a living wage, and all of the things that I will tick box to make sure that it meets my requirements. So I have almost like a catalogue of brands that I trust that I will look to for my clients. And yeah, just having that intention with everything that I do. So wanting to really get to know the client and make sure that we're building something out that fits their lifestyle, that's not just going to be, something that they have and then discard within a year or within a season. It's something that's really going to work really hard for them in their wardrobe. And that idea of building out that capsule wardrobe that's going to last you forever, ideally, but as long as it possibly can.
So my first thought is that's really handy. I mean, you must spend a lot of time doing research on brands, and figuring out if they're living up to your values and the values that they're communicating. That would be really helpful. I talk to a lot of B1 end users, not merchants, but end users who are looking to fold sustainability into their lives. And a lot of it is starting with their kids, because their kids are at an age that they're asking questions about climate change and climate impact. And so they're looking to fold sustainability into their lives more and more, but also their people. So, doing drastic things is, not possible. Nobody has the bandwidth or the time, or maybe even like the physical space to do anything drastic, but looking for small ways to fold sustainability into their lives. Replacing single-use plastics, for example, and just small things that add up to something big. And being able to talk to somebody who's done the research around brands, clothing brands, accessory brands, that must be really, really helpful for your clients. Which leads me to my next question. That was not a question, that was just a thought based on what you said. But my next question is, how do you work with clients? Do you have, I mean, you're one person, so you must have a limit in terms of how many people you can have, clients you can have on at the same time. And then do people do, kind of an initial 5 sessions, and then they're equipped to kind of go into the world? Or do they come back to you, once a year, when they want a style refresh, when they have a special occasion coming up? What's the long-term client relationships that you have?
So a lot of my clients, because my process is quite in depth, once they've done that kind of signature program, they're quite well set up and quite well equipped to go off and manage by themselves. But I do still get people coming back for repeat wardrobe edits and personal shopping and things like that, because they just like the convenience of having somebody else take the hassle out of it for them. And sometimes it's that kind of reconfirmation of having a professional opinion to support them, and because they are quite time poor as well. But I also have a membership as well, which is kind of a more accessible price point for people who want that kind of ongoing support, especially with confidence and sustainability, and just understanding themselves and understanding how to make the most of their existing wardrobe, so they're not having to spend loads of money on new things. So that allows people to work with me on an ongoing basis at a much lower price point than the investment of working with me one-to-one.
And does that just look like when somebody's out, they like snap you a picture, like, what about this? What do you know about this brand? Hey, I have my daughter's wedding coming up. Help! Exclamation mark. Is it kind of like that?
Yeah, a little bit. It's kind of, I call it a style sisterhood, because it's just for women, and it's kind of like a private members group. So we do kind of monthly style Q&As where people can bring dilemmas and challenges and questions, some of which are like the ones that you just mentioned in terms of the examples. But they also have access to my online program, which is called Empowered Style, and that's all about recognizing the influences that we have on our style. So there's a module that's all about societal conditioning and why you feel the way that you feel about your body image, and then looking at different body shapes, looking at the power of color, looking at kind of detoxing your wardrobe and maximizing your wardrobe and what a capsule wardrobe looks like, and building all of those processes into your mindset, I guess, and everything around sustainability and why certain fabrics are better to look out for than others, and things to look out for to avoid greenwashing, and all of the kind of practical tips and advice on shopping pre-loved and selling your own clothing pre-loved and all of those kind of things. So it's you kind of get the whole 360, you get the kind of self-study within there, and then you also get my support as well, and the support of the other women within the group.
Oh, this is you must be very, very busy. How many clients can you have, new clients at once?
So I tend to, for my one-to-one, I tend to have kind of 3 to 5 on my kind of signature program, and then can have a few one-off things like, I might do a color analysis or a personal shop or that kind of thing. And then, the membership's still relatively new, but the numbers are kind of infinite with that, because I want to be able to have as much impact as possible and to create a really positive ripple effect. So I hope to really grow the numbers of that to reach as many women as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's talk about business building now. How do you acquire new customers?
So I think traditionally it's, very much when I first started, it was through doing in-person events, getting myself out there, sharing my expertise. And then as I pivoted my business online, social media has been a really important part of my lead generation. So Facebook has actually been a really big source of clients for me. I have a private Facebook group, which I've had for a few years. I've got, I think, about 600 people in there. So I've had a lot of clients through that, and some through kind of Instagram and LinkedIn. I'm dabbling with TikTok at the moment, but I haven't had any clients through that so far. But yeah, I think for me, it's been word of mouth has also, as I've built my business, has been important as well, because when somebody has a really amazing transformation, then they share that with a friend or a colleague or that kind of thing. But I also attend sort of online and in-person networking groups to sort of build my brand and get my message out there as well.
Would you say that social media is, specifically Facebook, is your biggest converting channel?
Yeah, I would say so.
And it's completely organic? You're not doing any paid social. It's 100% organic social.
Yeah, all organic.
Wow. So how much of your time, actually, let's go back. I have a bigger question now. What does your week look like? How much time do you spend creating content for your members group? How much time do you spend creating content for social media? And then how much time do you spend on your core business?
I spend
your core services.
Yeah, I spend a disproportionate amount of time on social media, I would say. I have a love-hate relationship with it.
As do we all, yeah.
Yeah. Because I actually, I'm very creative, so I love creating content, and I love serving people and supporting people and changing perceptions and all of those kind of things. But it does take up a very large proportion of my time, creating that content and engaging with people, and being on 4 different platforms and my membership, and within online networking groups as well. Yeah, it does take up quite a large proportion of my time. I would almost say like a 50-50 to client work versus that side of things.
Yeah, so getting clients in, acquisition versus servicing clients. That's interesting. Okay. And okay, so you're super on social media. Is it just you? Do you have like a virtual personal assistant? Do you have a community manager that's part-time? Anybody? This is 100% you.
100% me. Yeah. I wear all the hats.
And that, I mean, as an entrepreneur myself, that sounds sometimes so appealing, because you don't have any discussions with anybody else about, maybe you'll solicit some advice, etc. but that also, of course, you're limited by the amount of hours that you personally have in a day. What is the plan for expansion?
So I would definitely like to bring on board a VA at the very least. And I think in a kind of bigger picture vision, I would love to bring in almost like an apprentice, like stylist, and train them up kind of from scratch, to work alongside me in the business and to be able to serve more clients on a one-to-one basis, and perhaps to be, a bit of a community manager as well. But that would definitely be more of a kind of mid to long term.
Okay. Actually, I've been wanting to ask you this since we did the intro. Where are all of the countries that you have clients in? And is it possible? I know you said you'd like to do some things in person. It must help just to meet somebody, just to have a look at them, because you're literally styling them and what they're wearing. So to have a look at their bodies and what they look like. But can you do 100% kind of your end-to-end, your signature package? Can you do that 100% online? So that's another, sorry for these rambling questions. That's another two-parter question. Where in the world literally are all of your clients? And can you do completely virtual styling?
Yes. So actually, a lot of my clients still tend to be UK based. I have had some international clients, so Spain, the US, Australia, Dubai. But actually, if I think about, percentage wise, I would say probably 90+% is UK, and probably a disproportionate amount is actually local to me as well, because people do still really enjoy that in-person, face-to-face connection, especially when you're, investing quite a bit of your time and your money into something. I think people want to have that experience. But I can 100% do everything online. So my full signature program can be done online. And actually the style personality session is always done online, because I use online platforms and I use Pinterest as part of that. So it actually benefits the client to go through it all online on Zoom. But yeah, the color analysis can be done online, and the wardrobe edit and personal shopping. And then we have a final session where it's kind of called the Nail Your Style Formula session. So everything kind of gets pulled together and we finalize a catalogue of outfits essentially. And that's all done on Zoom if it's in the virtual sense.
Okay, so most of our listener base is in the US. So anybody listening out there, if you're interested, feel free to hit up Alex. That's actually not a problem. So let's go through our rapid fire. And we're still in Q1 2024, so it's the start of the year. If we look back on last year, how would you describe last year for you and your business? For a lot of folks, I mean, I'm in fintech and retail data payments. 2023 was the year that I think a lot of entrepreneurs will be unpacking with their therapists for decades to come. How was the year for you?
Yeah, I would say that's quite an accurate description. For me, it was the year that I took the business full time. So I dropped my corporate part-time job, because 2022 was an amazing year for me. So it felt like a good stepping stone to do that. And then it didn't quite feel like that once I actually took that leap, because it was a year of up and downs, I would say. And I think with cost of living crisis and everything that was going on in the world.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, 2023 was rough across the board. Okay, so looking forward to 2024 and the rest of the year, what are your plans?
So I'm just really excited to create more impact this year. My kind of word of the year is growth. So I'm really trying to push myself out of my comfort zone and get myself out there as much as possible, because I'm really, really passionate about female empowerment and about creating that positive impact. So the more people that I can engage with and impact in terms of changing perceptions around the power of style and, you know, creating those more conscious shopping habits and mindset, the better. So the membership is a huge part of that, but also, you know, speaking opportunities. I'm excited to be a part of the Good Clothes show, which is happening in September. So things like that are great opportunities to kind of spread the message and impact more people.
Awesome. And could you give a little plug for your membership? How much does it cost?
At the moment, we have a founding members rate, which is £29 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we filled those spots, it will go up to £39 a month.
How many places are left just for our listeners?
We have 9 places left at the moment.
Okay, everybody, 9 spots left at this price. Okay, good to know. And can you share with the audience what you feel like is your biggest failure to date?
Oh, good question. I think for me, it's probably, and I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, but I think I was very naive coming into setting my business up, which I think you probably do have to have an element of that being an entrepreneur, to be crazy enough to start something
If
in
you
the
knew
first
what was
place.
ahead of you, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But I didn't, I didn't, you know, fully consider everything that I needed to essentially when I started my business. So I didn't really think about sales and, you know, lead generation. And, you know, I very much was naive and thought, you know, I am on this mission to help as many women as possible and to create this positive impact, and didn't necessarily think about how I would, other than like social media, how I would market myself, how I would sell myself, that I would need to have, you know, sales calls with people and get myself out there and, you know, all of that. I mean, it's not necessarily a failure, but it's definitely been a huge learning curve for me.
sure. And in the entrepreneur world, just like everywhere else, a failure, what is a failure if not a learning opportunity? As long as it doesn't kill you. And even if it does kill you dead, there's always tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, if you could get 85% of the world to adopt a single behavior, what would that be?
I think being intentional. So I think so often, you know, we want everything yesterday. And you know, that I was part of that problem when I worked at Amazon, because they just make it so easy for everybody to have everything instantly. But I've definitely really enjoyed slowing down my consumption and asking myself questions about, you know, why do I need this? How is this going to impact my lifestyle? Just having that more conscious approach and that intentional approach, I think, changes so much in our kind of day-to-day decisions. So I think even if you don't particularly know what you're looking for in terms of sustainable brands and that kind of thing, just having that intentionality with everything that you're purchasing and all the decisions that you're making, I think that has a huge positive impact on where we go in the future.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then finally, could you plug where we can find you? Website, social media handles, etc.
Yes. So it's basically luxleopardlifestyle.co.uk is the website, the same handle on Instagram. And then you can find me on Facebook. I have a private Facebook group, and LinkedIn, I'm over there as well. And TikTok is Lux Leopard Lifestyle as well, I think.
Wonderful. Alex, thank you so much for talking to us about all things personal styling. I have a lot of more questions, so I might just hit you up on LinkedIn for
Yeah, of
myself, but
course.
also in terms of sustainability and how this folds into personal styling. So thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And everybody else in the audience, we will see you on B1.